Whether you're stuck in traffic, hitting the gym, or just winding down, I'm here to spill the hottest tea from your favorite Bravo shows. From the wildest reunions to the quietest social media unfollows, we cover it all, so buckle up literally because the drama starts right now. So that opening really sets the stage, but I have to say, what we have in front of us today, it goes way beyond just tea.
Oh, absolutely. The source material we're digging into it's a stack of reporting on some really serious developments across the Bravoverse.
Yeah, this is not about, who's throwing shade or arguing over a seating chart at a dinner party. We're actually dissecting situations where the real world is colliding pretty forcefully with this reality TV bubble.
Exactly. We're talking about major legal battles. We have a judge mandating 8 years of financial documents in a pretty serious insurance fraud case involving stars from Potomac.
Right.
And then there are these extraordinary, really heartbreaking custody claims and allegations coming out of Orange County.
It's heavy stuff. And beyond that, we're also getting these really deep, fascinating insights into character and manipulation that are swirling around Salt Lake City, Beverly Hills, and of course, the Vanderpump crew.
So I guess our mission today, for you listening, is to really dissect what happens when that veneer of the show, when it finally cracks.
And these stars are forced to face genuine, high-stakes consequences. We're looking at sincerity, character, legal trouble.
We really are. We're moving from the sort of fun, frivolous drama into some very, very serious territory.
And I think we should start where those personal consequences are really showing up as some intense self-reflection. Let's talk about Bronwyn Newport and the lessons she says she's learned from her time on The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
Right. So Bronwyn Newport has been, remarkably open about her experience after the show, which, as you know, is not something you see from every housewife.
No, not at all.
She's admitted that watching her time on the show back was, and this is her word, eye-opening.
So this wasn't just a fun celebrity turn for her. It sounds like it was a really confronting exercise in self-discovery.
That's the perfect way to put it. It forced her to acknowledge these patterns in her own behavior and in her relationships that, she just hadn't seen before.
It's like the cameras weren't just recording her life. They were acting as this kind of inescapable and probably pretty painful mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest revelation for her, which she put in perfect reality TV terms, was admitting she has a pattern of snitchery.
Which is fascinating because before the show, she said she would have described herself as fiercely loyal, a good friend to tell a secret to.
But the footage doesn't lie.
It doesn't. And she realized she is almost instinctively quick to jump into conflicts to correct the facts. She's the first one to say, nope, that's not what was said. This is what was said.
And while I'm sure her intention might be about finding the truth or, getting accountability,
the result, and she'd admitted this, is that she ends up spilling the secrets all the time.
and this wasn't just some internal realization she had on her own. It was really fueled by feedback from the outside, which I think is key here.
Absolutely. She confirmed that viewers and people around her were pointing it out, saying things like, "We don't like that about you."
Wow.
So she had to grapple with this idea that her need to correct people was actually coming across as her running information between friends and maybe even undermining trust.
So she just came out and said it. Her conclusion was, I'm kind of a snitch, actually. That isn't so fun. I don't love that about me.
I mean, that willingness to own a genuinely negative trait that the audience and her own friends are pointing out, that's a huge moment of self-revelation.
It really is. It shows she's accepting that her idea of herself as this loyal fact checker was clashing and clashing hard with how everyone else saw her as this chaotic truth teller.
And in the ecosystem of Salt Lake City, where trust is already so scarce, that kind of tendency, it can become a weapon.
Okay, so let's connect this snitchery idea back to that infamous plane drama. The one involving Meredith Marks and Brittany Bateman. Bronwyn was right in the middle of that, trying to figure out who was telling the truth.
Right. And she decided to confide in Whitney Rose about it all. And she even said later she thought Meredith would hate that conversation.
Initially, though, she was pretty skeptical about how serious the plane incident was. I remember that.
Which is natural, when you're friends with the person being accused. She was publicly asking some very valid questions, like, why wasn't law enforcement called? Where's the video footage?
Why wasn't Meredith banned from the airline?
Exactly. All things that implied the story had to be, blown out of proportion. But then the collective weight of what everyone else was saying, it started to shift her view.
And that's where the group consensus really mattered. She had to concede that, as she put it, Everyone has a pretty similar story.
The only outliers being Lisa Barlow and Meredith herself.
Right. So the fact that most of her friends had this consistent and pretty troubling account of what happened, it pushed her to accept that, okay, regardless of any legal outcome, something serious did happen on that plane.
And that shift in her belief, that's really the foundation of Bronwyn's main criticism of Meredith, which all comes down to a complete lack of accountability.
She's not even asking Meredith to admit she committed a crime or even that she behaved wrongly by her own standards.
No, not at all. The requirement of friendship, according to Bronwyn, is way simpler. It's just the ability to hear what your friends are telling you.
It's about basic emotional validation. Bronwyn's core issue is that Meredith refuses to acknowledge the impact of her actions, even when her friends are coming to her and saying, you know, you made us feel uncomfortable.
Or, this person felt like you were out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Bronwyn thinks Meredith just needed to be able to acknowledge, I'm sorry I made you feel that way, or even just, I'm sorry if I went too far for you.
And for Bronwyn, Meredith claiming she has nothing to be sorry for when everyone else feels so wronged. That's the thing that ends the friendship.
It says so much about the relational currency on these shows. If you can't even acknowledge the subjective experience of your co-stars, especially when they're expected to protect and defend you on camera, the friendships just become totally unsustainable.
So Bronwyn is basically arguing that if you refuse to validate a friend's feelings, you're essentially refusing the friendship itself.
Pretty much.
Which leads us very naturally to her own personal life and how the cameras magnified her marital challenges with her husband, Todd Bradley.
Yeah, she was incredibly candid about this. She said the last 2 years have been profoundly difficult, dealing with serious health issues in her family and just this intense scrutiny of her marriage.
And the spotlight, as she said, it just magnifies those challenges. It takes what might be a normal marital rough patch and turns it into a public spectacle that's being analyzed by millions.
That is such a critical insight into the real cost of being on a reality show. And she contrasted her approach, which she said is all about self-revelation and vulnerability, showing the real struggle, with some of the other women who choose to present a much more controlled version of themselves.
And she thinks that difference in approach is the fundamental reason the group dynamic shifted so much.
Her argument is that you can't truly be friends with somebody if you're not willing to be vulnerable and show who you really are, flaws and all.
So the women who are unwilling to admit they're wrong or accept any criticism, they create this inherent instability in the group. They separate the authentic players from the strategic ones.
And that brings us to the most fractured relationship she talked about, the one with Lisa Barlow.
Right.
While Bronwyn does admit they both share the blame, saying she's as much to blame as Lisa for the breakdown, she identifies this one key difference in their priorities that makes fixing things feel, well, impossible right now.
And that difference is the show versus the friendship.
Exactly. Bronwyn feels she prioritizes the actual underlying friendship. She wants things to be good, or at least neutral, between them. But Lisa, she suspects, is prioritizing the narrative, the show.
She actually said that Lisa wants to be right on camera. She wants the audience to feel like what she did and how she handled me was correct.
I mean, that is a devastating critique of a reality TV friendship. Bronwyn is basically saying Lisa is playing to the audience, to production, making sure her actions look justified to us, the viewers.
While Bronwyn is just focused on the private trust, you need to keep a connection going when the cameras are turned off.
And the ultimate line that was crossed, the boundary that fractured everything, it came down to family.
Of course.
Bronwyn pointed to a specific moment from a recent season where Lisa was willing to say things about my family that I don't think she would have wanted said about her family on camera.
And that's the point of no return, that violation of a personal, private boundary.
It is. Bronwyn felt that if they weren't friends, then Lisa talking about her family was just none of Lisa's business. But if they were friends, then Lisa absolutely should not have put that on camera, knowing the real-world fallout.
So the willingness to weaponize family drama for a storyline or to win an argument, it just destroyed any private trust they had.
Which makes it pretty easy to understand why Bronwyn questions if they are show friends or real friends, and why she concludes pretty decisively that they are neither right now.
The camera just took a relationship that was already strained and made it completely toxic.
But on a more positive note, we did get a clearer picture of her current inner circle.
Right, her alliances. She confirmed who she's closest to now, listing Mary Cosby, Whitney Rose, and Angie Katzenevas in that order.
And the detail she gave about Mary Cosby is particularly insightful. She called Mary the softer Todd in her life.
Okay, that needs a little unpacking.
I think when she says softer Todd, she means Mary is the person who steps in to set her straight when she's, spiraling out of control, much like her husband does, but maybe with a slightly different touch.
So she appreciates that Mary can be direct and challenging.
She does, and she feels that Mary and Todd actually get along and respect each other, which creates this stable, safe relationship for her outside of all the group's chaos.
And what about Whitney?
With Whitney, she said she respects that Whitney can handle criticism of her actions, which Bronwyn noted not everyone in the group can handle. So again, it shows her preference for friends who are also willing to be vulnerable and accept feedback.
It's a fascinating look at how loyalties get rearranged when the cameras stop rolling. She's prioritizing connections that offer, genuine accountability, not the theatrical friendships the show requires.
Okay, so now we transition from that kind of internal relational accountability to external legal consequences. And we have to do a deep dive into the ongoing insurance fraud case facing Wendy and Eddie Osefo from The Real Housewives of Potomac.
And let's be clear, this is not a storyline. This is a very serious, high-stakes legal battle with real prison time on the line.
The severity is just. It's underlined by the immediate action the court took. A Carroll County judge mandated that Wendy and Eddie have to turn over a massive amount of financial documents.
Covering 8 years of their history, the scope of that demand is just extraordinary in a reality TV context.
And their defense attorneys push back hard.
Oh, I'm sure.
Their legal team argued that this was an annoyance, that it was overbroad, and that it was basically a fishing expedition that had no real bearing on the alleged crime. They were clearly trying to shield their financial history.
But the judge ruled against the Osefos and sided with the state of Maryland. So the question is, why does the prosecution need 8 years of their financial history?
That's what we have to unpack. The authorities believe those documents are crucial for establishing a motive.
A motive. Okay.
The prosecution is working on a theory that the Osefos had a pattern of excessive spending that led to some kind of financial strain, or that they were, as one report put it, swamped in debt.
So they're arguing this financial pressure is what drove the alleged fraud surrounding that $450,000 claim they filed.
Exactly. After an alleged burglary at their home in April of 2024, essentially, the documents are meant to prove that they needed the money, providing the financial context for the alleged crime.
So this isn't just some legal tactic. It's aimed directly at their credibility and at establishing financial desperation. And the authorities have some hard evidence that challenges the Osefo story about the burglary itself.
They do, and this is the really chilling detail that makes the case so difficult for the defense. Legal analysis has pointed out that the internal sensors and cameras at their home detected no motion at the time the burglary supposedly occurred.
Which directly contradicts the story you'd need to support a $450,000 claim for stolen items.
Right. If your own home security system recorded no physical entry or movement, it severely weakens the core of your claim that a genuine, large-scale burglary happened.
That lack of internal motion it's a devastating piece of circumstantial evidence. And the seriousness of this whole situation, it just can't be overstated. Wendy is facing 16 charges.
And 7 of those are felonies. Each felony charge carries a potential prison sentence of up to 15 years.
This is federal level serious.
It is. Their lawyer has maintained that they look forward to going to trial and defending their clients vigorously, but the legal system is not treating this like a minor celebrity issue.
No.
An officer from the Carroll County Sheriff's Office noted they're handling this case whether she is a real housewife, a fake housewife, or whatever she is. The judge's order for 8 years of private financial data, it just confirms the seriousness level is exceptionally high.
So the Osefos are battling a legal consequence that demands transparency. Now let's switch gears to someone who's dealing with, let's say, relational and ethical transparency. Ashley Darby.
Her personal life remains extraordinarily complex, as we saw in her recent Watch What Happens Live appearance.
Ashley is a master of navigating, or maybe just ignoring, boundaries. So first up, we have the fascinating and frankly pretty shocking hookup with Charisse Jackson Jordan's son, Jackson Jordan.
Who is 27.
Right? So Ashley confirmed they kissed, and when she was asked if they did more than a kiss, she was very coy. She just replied, maybe.
But what really stood out was the intensity she described. Despite the 10-year age gap, Ashley's 37, she said when Jackson made the first move and they touched hands, She felt a genuine electricity.
She even confessed she didn't think she would ever be drawn to a little youngin' like that.
And the detail about the secrecy is also very telling.
Yeah.
Jackson immediately asked her to keep it a secret.
But Ashley, being Ashley, was worried about the immediate consequence. Cherie seeing the whole thing on her security camera, since Jackson had just moved back in with his mom at the time.
It just highlights her attraction to these high-stakes, almost impossible situations. She did say they hung out more than one time and kept in touch, though she hadn't seen him in a year since that party was filmed.
Speaking of boundaries and consequences, she also addressed her apology to Wendy Acefo from BravoCon.
Which was far from a simple apology.
Not at all. Ashley was very careful to spell out who the apology was for. She clarified it was directed primarily at Wendy's children, who she emphatically called innocent bystanders.
And then she delivered the line. My apology that I gave to her was to her children more than anyone else, and I stand by that apology, and Wendy can also go kick rocks.
That is such a characteristic Ashley move. She takes responsibility only where it affects innocent people or where she can, score a PR win, but she maintains this profound hostility toward the adult co-star involved.
It's a performative apology. It's designed to win public favor while she's still declaring war on Wendy.
And this ties right into the theme of genuineness, which she brought up when she was talking about the newest cast member, Stacey Rush.
Right. Ashley said she had concerns with Stacey's authenticity and genuineness and the truth, particularly about her relationship status with her husband and, specifically, a rumored past romance with Chris Samuels.
And Ashley made it clear that she personally didn't care if Stacey had a past with Chris Samuels. Her issue was with Stacey's denial of the rumor.
Yes. She questioned why Stacey would skirt the issue if it wasn't a problem.
Ashley's logic is blunt, but it lines up with the reality TV code of conduct. She basically argued that if you're going to skirt around the issue, it looks like you have something to hide, so why not just be honest and say, yeah, we knocked boots and call it a day?
For Ashley, the act of denial and the lack of transparency, those are the real character flaws, not the rumored past encounter itself. It's a subtle but really significant critique of how authenticity is measured in this world.
And finally, Ashley's own romantic life saw a classic Bravo move. She confirms she is spinning the block with Josh Goodenberg.
For anyone listening who's less familiar, spinning the block means returning to a previous romantic relationship, often one that was already, troubled or had failed.
She confirmed they are dating again, and he was even in New York with her. She called him a good guy and a very good time. But the key takeaway here is that the fundamental problems, they're still completely unresolved.
Oh, completely. She confirmed the finance issues and the children part of it are still issues.
And yet she admitted, I just can't quit him.
Which just confirms this cyclical nature of her romantic life, the attraction versus the practical realities of building a sustainable blended family.
And just as a side note, she also mentioned a nice embrace with Karen Huger at BravoCon and revealed her children's book will be out soon before she starts touring.
Okay, time to head west to Orange County, where the casting drama is just as intense as the personal drama. There have been some pretty strong rumors about Emily Simpson being fired ahead of season 20.
Which is scheduled to start filming in February 2026, so a little ways off.
Right, and these rumors were first floated by an online fan account, but we actually have a direct, though still unofficial, denial from a key co-star.
Gina Kirschenheiter. She responded to a fan comment on Instagram who was upset about the supposed firing, and she just wrote, absolutely not.
So while that's not an official network press release, Gina's confidence seems to suggest that Emily is still in the mix for the next season.
And that season 20 landscape, it's already shaping up to be a bit of a throwback.
A huge throwback. Vicki Gunvalson is confirmed as a full-time returnee, which is a massive development given her role as, the OG of the OC.
And prior reports listed Gina, Tamra Judge, Heather Dubrow, Shannon Bador, and Jennifer Pedranti as all returning. Emily was the one listed as on the bubble before Gina's denial.
And production really seems to be leaning into nostalgia. The rumor mill has been churning out this long list of past housewives who might make guest appearances.
Like Gina Keogh, Joe De La Rosa, Lori Peterson,
Kimberly Bryant, Alexis Bellino. Plus, there was a specific rumor that former RHONJ star Jacqueline Lorita was approached to join.
That makes sense since she moved to Orange County a couple of years ago.
It looks like they're trying to recapture some of that early years magic by bringing back foundational figures and maybe injecting some fresh East Coast energy, just to stabilize a cast that's seen a lot of changes recently.
Okay, but we have to pivot now to the single most emotionally charged and serious piece of news coming out of the Orange County world.
I agree.
The dramatic custody shift involving former housewife Meghan King and her ex-husband Jim Edmonds. This is a major real-world consequence with life-altering implications for their young children.
The emotional gravity here, it really can't be overstated. Jim Edmonds announced publicly that he had gained full custody of their 3 children, their daughter Aspen and their twin sons Hayes and Hart.
He said they just had their last day of school in Missouri and are officially moving with him and his wife, Courtney O'Connor, to Tennessee.
And the restructuring of their family life is just immense. Jim specified that the children will only see their mother, Megan, for a few weeks each summer.
That is not a slight change. It's a monumental, geographically enforced change to the core parenting arrangement.
And the reports about the underlying cause, they provide the devastating context for this move. The custody change reportedly followed a Child Protective Services, or CPS, investigation.
Which signals that the court was addressing some very serious allegations related to the welfare of the children.
And the specific allegation that came out of that CPS investigation, and we have to treat this with the serious gravity it deserves, is that Megan allegedly gave her son Hayes unprescribed Ritalin.
And that she requested the school nurse to do the same.
I mean, that claim, if it was substantiated to the court's satisfaction, that would absolutely provide the mechanism for such a drastic custody shift.
For sure. Administering unprescribed medication to a child, especially something like Ritalin that impacts development, that would be seen by a court as a severe breach of maternal safety and judgment.
In these kinds of high-stakes custody battles, that's the type of allegation that often overrides the natural preference for children to remain with their mother. It would justify transferring full custody to the father.
And unsurprisingly, Jim Edmonds' public announcement led to some really intense fan reactions online. People were questioning his motives, his behavior.
He was immediately accused by fans of using his considerable wealth to influence the custody decision.
And his response to that was pretty sarcastic. He replied, "Yes, I bought the state of Missouri out, wow."
Which, while maybe satisfying for him to write, it did very little to quiet the skepticism.
Other fans accused him of bragging about the custody win, suggesting his public announcement, which focused on the new chapter and not the emotional upheaval for the kids or the difficulty for their mother, just came off as really insensitive.
It absolutely did.
Yeah.
And the public nature of this family disruption, it forces a discussion on the ethics of publicly celebrating a win in a child custody case.
Right. While he has a right to defend his legal win, the fan backlash just highlights the lack of nuance in these public disputes.
His post, which I'm sure was intended as an announcement of relief, was interpreted by a lot of people as him just rubbing salt in the wound.
It suggests there are 2 profoundly painful sides to this story, and for those 3 young children, the outcome is clear. Their lives have just fundamentally changed. They're moving hundreds of miles away with very limited summer visits with their mother.
All right, let's pivot to the West Coast, where, according to some outsiders, the rules of reality TV engagement are fundamentally different.
We're talking about the perceived double standard that governs the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, and this was sharply critiqued by Dolores Catania from RHOP.
Dolores was, utterly blunt in her assessment. She stated plainly that no one gets away with what Beverly Hills gets away with not talking about their life.
Which points to a perceived structural double standard within the whole franchise system. The Beverly Hills cast seems to get a pass on the level of radical transparency that's demanded of women in other cities.
And the prime example of this right now is Kyle Richards' situation with Morgan Wade.
Right. Tamra Judge offered a defense, noting that Kyle's hands are tied because Morgan didn't want to be mentioned by name, even though Kyle openly admitted she was in a relationship.
It's that classic, unavoidable conflict between your privacy obligations and your performance requirements for the show.
But Dolores argues that that excuse just would not fly in New Jersey or Potomac.
Not for a second. She noted that plenty of partners of housewives don't want to be involved, but those stars are often given an ultimatum. Then we have to rethink your status.
So Dolores' critical point is that when you sign up for this job, your personal life, especially a high-profile romance, is expected to be on the table.
And the fact that Kyle could keep her partner nameless despite the ongoing storyline, it just demonstrates a level of protection or maybe negotiation power afforded to RHOPH that actively undermines the expected transparency of the whole show format.
It sets up an unfair expectation. If the currency of the show is authentic vulnerability, but the biggest stars are allowed to manage the narrative by leaving out key facts, how can the audience trust the authenticity of the conflicts that are being shown?
It creates a sense of performance over reality. And you can contrast that lack of transparency with someone who is currently trying almost too hard to be transparent and accountable. Sutton's track.
And her attempts to mend that fractured friendship with Dorate Kemsley.
Yes, we have a preview of an upcoming episode that's focused entirely on Sutton's efforts toward relational healing. She is actively trying to bridge that gap with Dorate.
So she's planning a trip to Sedona, Arizona, which she specifically calls a place of healing.
She's inviting the whole group, but her specific goal is hoping to reach a better place and ideally become genuine friends with Dorate. She acknowledged that they are currently at a safe place where we're cordial.
Which is a perfect description of a purely performative reality TV relationship.
It is. But she wants to elevate that connection. However, her very earnest efforts met some resistance from a very close friend, Jennifer Tilly.
Right. Jennifer advised Sutton not to barge in on the friendship process, cautioning her about her intensity, and Sutton reacted fiercely to this constructive criticism.
Sutton is incredibly sensitive when she feels she's being mocked or dismissed, especially when she's trying to be vulnerable and show how she has worked on herself for the better.
She just snapped at Jennifer, telling her, "You cannot mock me."
And that interaction itself, it demonstrates the precise behavioral pattern that causes her relationship issues in the first place.
Which leads us to Jennifer Tilly's deeply insightful analysis of Sutton's character in a confessional. She used a truly brilliant analogy.
She did. She described Sutton as a Catherine wheel firework. You know, the one that spins rapidly on a fixed point.
It's a perfect analogy. It perfectly captures the nature of accidental offense.
Jennifer said that sometimes when Sutton gets worked up or anxious or is trying too hard, the sparks go everywhere. She clarified that Sutton isn't trying to hurt people, but sometimes you get hit by the sparks.
So she's unintentionally causing pain because of her emotional intensity and her lack of control over her own anxious energy.
That Catherine wheel concept, it's the analytical tool we needed. It suggests Sutton's problems often aren't malicious. They're rooted in her inability to manage her intensity, which causes her emotional energy to spin out and just inadvertently scorch whoever's nearby.
And that reinforces why her relationships, like the one with Dorit, need so much healing, even when Sutton believes her intentions were completely pure.
Okay, we shift now from unintentional offense in Beverly Hills to, well, arguably intentional and extreme hostility in the Vanderpump Rules world.
We have to discuss the horrific and frankly misogynistic comments made by Tom Sandoval about his former co-star, Katie Maloney.
This moves so far beyond typical reality TV shade or sniping. Sandoval was playing a live game of Frank, Marry, Kill on stage with Katie, Lisa Vanderpump, and Lala Kent.
And his choice for Katie was murder. But the rationale he gave was even more disturbing than the initial choice.
It was startlingly aggressive. He used, true crime analysis to justify his choice. He compared Katie to the opposite of a murder victim you'd see described on Discovery ID.
He said those victims are usually described as someone who had a smile that would light up the room and would make the room ignite.
The implication was crystal clear. Katie is so unpleasant or dim that she wouldn't even meet the standard requirements for a sympathetic victim on a TV show.
But the fact that this wasn't spontaneous is the most chilling part.
No, he revealed he had previously told Tom Schwartz, Katie's ex-husband, this exact same thing. He told him, "I've been watching a lot of Discovery ID. Your wife is in no danger of being murdered."
Wow.
He explicitly said Katie does not light up the room at all. He then concluded his choices with murder, Katie, FK Lala, and marry Lisa. This just shows a long-held, calculated, misogynistic view of Katie, not just a momentary lapse in judgment.
And Katie Maloney's clapback was immediate, it was ferocious, and it used the currency of the digital age perfectly.
Her immediate reply was that iconic meme of herself saying, "Choke, I don't care." But she quickly moved beyond humor into a very serious accusation.
Right. She added the explosive comment that Sandoval has the characteristics of a murderer.
I mean, that is an extraordinary escalation. It shifts the conflict from typical reality show sparring into character assassination, especially given the history between them and, the public perception of Sandoval post-Scandoval.
And this ties directly back to Katie's previous statements about Sandoval's influence during her marriage to Schwartz. She has long harbored this intense animosity toward him. She sees him not just as a co-star, but as a destructive force in her personal life.
Exactly. She's addressed her profound dislike for him before, stating that he was very manipulative of Tom Schwartz throughout their marriage.
She said that based on what Sandoval felt comfortable saying about her, even right in front of her, she could only imagine the psychological warfare he waged when she wasn't around. She called that whole thought process terrifying.
And Katie confirmed that while she doesn't blame the split entirely on Sandoval, she feels his toxic influence was a huge factor in the demise of her decade-long relationship with Swartz.
She clearly feels his manipulation and psychological abuse undermined her marriage, and his recent comments comparing her to a murder victim are just a continuation of that cruelty.
It raises a profound question about the whole Vanderpump Rules dynamic. Since Scandival, the cast has really struggled to differentiate between a reality TV villain performance and genuinely dangerous, hostile personality traits.
And Sandoval seems completely incapable of recognizing that line. He consistently deploys maximum malice in the name of performance, and he's blurring the boundary between TV villainy and what feels like an actual threat.
So this deep dive has really covered the entire dizzying spectrum of consequence in the reality TV landscape. We started with the intensely personal, internal accountability of Bronwyn Newport realizing she's a snitch and confronting the relational flaws the camera magnified.
Then we moved immediately to external consequence, to mandated transparency with the Osifos, who are battling serious legal jeopardy, 7 felonies, and a court demanding 8 years of their financial records. That shows the huge difference between choosing to be open and being forced open by the law.
We saw the real-world destruction of a family in Orange County, with Jim Edmonds gaining full custody of his kids, allegedly after a CPS investigation involving severe allegations of unprescribed medication use. I mean, a truly non-frivolous consequence that fundamentally altered the lives of 3 children.
And finally, we analyzed that relentless tension between the required transparency in Beverly Hills, which some stars seem able to just sidestep, and the shocking, manipulative hostility displayed by Tom Sandoval toward Katie Maloney, proving that even a friendship conflict can descend into accusations of genuinely dangerous behavior.
And it all comes back to this central tension that we found woven throughout all of these sources.
When a reality star's job requires radical transparency, like Dolores argues it should, but that transparency immediately leads to massive public scrutiny or severe legal jeopardy, or the dissolution of a family, like we saw with the Osifos and the Edmonds King situation, at what point does authentic vulnerability, the very currency the shows demand, become fundamentally unsustainable for the person who's just trying to survive in that spotlight?
It forces you to ask whether the reality television system, by its very design, is set up to reward a genuine reckoning with your own flaws, or if it is simply designed to punish it severely, ultimately driving everyone back toward those protected manufactured narratives that Dolores Catania finds so frustrating. For the person in it, the cost of being truly real might just be too high, and that's something you need to consider the next time you watch a housewife open up.